Hello and welcome to No One Can Hear You Pod. We don't usually discuss contemporary films on the pod, so we have a very exciting episode today. We're going to be talking about Paul Thomas Anderson, specifically his newest movie, One Battle After Another. I think at the end, we'll maybe do some rankings of where we see this with some of his other works as well as Leo's other works. But really excited to get into it. So, John, why don't you kick it off? How did you feel about it? Do you want to start with production? What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I want to talk to you first maybe about like what your relationship is to Paul Thomas Anderson. I mean, like if I think about my own, it's like I saw Boogie Nights in high school. Like it was one I always had heard a lot about that people like. I think over the years I've watched all of his movies now, and coming into this one, I wanted to make sure I was like fully prepped. I wanted to make sure I had a good base, and I think the one big gap for me was Magnolia, so I ended up doing that rewatch. I think or doing that first time watch, and then giving a rewatch to Boogie Nights. I was really like, I wanted to feel prepared. I was excited for this one. I think this is the most excited I've been for a movie coming out in a while, maybe since Brutalist. I think I got pretty hyped up about Brutalist. I
Mm-hmm.
guess it's only a year ago, but yeah, it was definitely exciting to be excited about movies again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I want to see maybe what about you in PTA? Like, what's kind of your history with them?
Yeah, I would say I have a kind of strangely fraught relationship with PTA where like I wouldn't go so far as to say it's love hate, although it's not far off because there's some of his movies that I'm just like, okay, obviously this is amongst the most influential like of the past 30 years and I think are just stupendous and I could watch over and over. But he also has some movies that have been really critically acclaimed that I've really not enjoyed at all and have disliked even. There's probably only one movie that I would, in my opinion, I mean, it's all subjective, right? But I personally could not stand Licorice Pizza. I think it's a bad movie, I would even say, which I think is a word you really shouldn't apply to art too often. Um, but just to start with, like my initial introduction to him was probably There Will Be Blood. That was obviously a mega hit that happened at the same time as No Country for Old Men, and in a way, it's almost like that was like a kind of like a oh god, like an original Barbenheimer, like just like these two movies that are just so inextricably linked for when they came out for different reasons. Those two movies were as different as possible. These two movies were quite similar in some ways, but I love that movie. Obviously, it's incredible. I then like once I kind of got more into movies, Boogie Nights came in the rotation, and I tried to make the rounds of Magnolia, The Master, Punch Drunk Love, Phantom Thread. So at this point, I've seen everything besides Hard Eight. But yeah, I mean, so I think he's regardless of my like, I almost compare it to like, it's just his flavor isn't always my favorite in terms of filmography.
Mhm.
So I pretty much always have deep respect for how he makes a film. It's just sometimes the style and the tone bumps with me. But I mean, I would still say like Boogie Nights, Magnolia, and certainly There Will Be Blood are like I think fantastic movies I could watch over and over again.
So, because of your hatred for Licorice Pizza, did Alana Haim getting sniped in the head excite you in the
It's
theater? Were you
so
clapping?
I literally in my head was like, "Let's fucking go!" I couldn't. When I saw her on the screen, I was like, "Oh, hopefully she's just like in this scene as a cameo thing." And honestly, when I saw her get popped, it's a crazy, like it's really pretty shocking when it does
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
But yeah, there actually was like consciously in the moment, I was like, "Okay, cool, nice.
You were like,
This is big for
woo.
me."
You're the lone like supporter.
Yay!
Uh, cool. Yeah. No. Yeah. So what'd you think of it? I mean, actually, before I ask you that, you sparked something in my mind of like the thing I don't always like about BTA is that I feel like there's a lot of things I'm still having to think about after it. Like you see the movie and then you're sitting with it
Hmm.
and you're like, what? Like it's like almost like you have to go watch it again. And Mark Maron talks about this on actually an interview with PTA in like 2017 after Inherent Vice came out of like, okay, looks like I got to go back to the theater again to figure out that one. Like I think a good example of
Hmm.
that is like The Master, where it's like you're not leaving The Master like, yep, got that. I understand how it's like I'm gonna score that. I'm all good.
Totally.
Like there's a lot of things left. This one, I mean, I felt good at the end of it. I felt like I got it. And I want to see what was your like initial reaction like leaving it.
Well, it's funny to hear you say that because I actually I still feel that way about this one. I would say it's like maybe it's more clear than the others. Like I think like certainly the master, but even Phantom Thread, I mean, kind of all of his movies, they do have some element of like I think they just you have to digest them a little bit. I think you have to see them a couple times. unless you're like really big brain, galaxy brain guy who can just pick up on everything. But I can't claim to be that. Like, I watch a lot of films, and I think I can pick up on a lot of the nuances of like, what are some of the references, and like, what is this shot trying to convey emotionally, and those things. But I still think there's just too much built into like the story here, especially, this one is like, it's very uh contemporary with where politics are. It's very timely with things that are going on today, which honestly I had for later to just talk about like things I like the most about this movie. Is like, I think it kind of blows my mind how topical pretty much everything that's going on in this movie is. Like, I think, I guess kind of getting into like almost like chronologically, like how the movie goes. Like the beginning of the movie, I enjoyed, but it kind of took me. It felt like it's similar to. Oh gosh, sorry, my mind is all over the place, but I have a lot
That's
of
okay.
thoughts. Similar to how the trailer to the movie and the theme for this movie is that like dun dun dun, like that single piano
Ticking.
note over and
Yeah.
over again.
Yeah.
It's like a metronome, and I think it took me a while to find that speed and how I was viewing the movie and what this movie was going to be about. What was the journey? Because that opening prelude sequence is, it's a lot of close-up shots. It's a lot of things are just happening quickly. We're jumping from one job to another in terms of their attacks.
Hmm.
And so I think it took me a second to like kind of dial in with what frequency he was looking for. And then once it kind of jumped ahead, I was like, okay, I feel like I understand the wavelength here. Um, and so anyways, yeah, I think there's just so much to break down here. Like, ultimately this movie is about, a lot of police brutality and fascism and all these things. And I think this is one that like you kind of need to have like a background in some degree of like political theory and like resistance theory to really understand all of it, and I certainly can't claim that. So I like, on like, spoiler alert, I can't like really give this a review in terms of stars. I think it's silly probably when we do it anyway, like usually, but this is just particularly an instance where there's just too much for me to say that I've digested it all.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I'm gonna walk back a bit what I said. Like, I think what I when I left the theater last night, like I didn't know quite what to think, but there was one thing I knew for sure was like this is the best movie I've seen this year. And then in
Mm-hmm.
counter to what you just said, I was like, this is the first 5 star I've seen since 2022. I think the last 5 star I gave was for Banshees of Inisherin. I think you didn't like that
Ah,
movie either, but that was the last 5 star I had.
no, I like that
Um,
movie.
oh, you did? Okay, for some reason I
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
you didn't.
yeah.
Okay, so this was my like most modern 5 star in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I wasn't quite sure how, like, I don't think I was quite sure what it was about, but I knew it was less complicated than something like The Master or something like Magnolia. Or
Yeah.
and I was like, I think I'll get there maybe in another viewing, but I was pretty certain of like this is like a 5 star movie to me. Like, I think the question that kept popping in my mind as I tried to like find a reason that it wouldn't be was like, what more do I need from a movie coming
Mm-hmm.
out in 2025? Like, if this is not five, what could possibly be? And maybe we'll get into that as we talk about like some of the best and worst and what would lead into that. I did, before we get into that, want to ask you like how your theater experience was. I don't know, like what format you saw it. Like, was there anything interesting about that?
I'm so glad you asked. I was going to bring this up. So Lou and I, as soon as the tickets opened up, bought tickets to see it at the Vista Theater, Tarantino's theater out here, which is one of
Nice.
the only three theaters in the world that's showing it with VistaVision. And so Leo and PTA were like at the premiere for it, I think on Friday, which is super cool. So we got there yesterday for the first showing of the day, which is I think it was at 2:30. So we get there at like 1:50, 1:55. There is like a 400-person line around the block 40 minutes early
Oof.
before, and obviously, like, I typically they have some sort of previews, so we thought we'd be there more than 40 minutes early. Essentially, it ended up being so packed, and that theater is not assigned seats, so when we get
Mm.
in, literally there's probably 20 people behind us. So we
Oof.
get in, there was no seats together, and so we ended up opting, and we would have been front row, which is not a theater to really do that for. So we took the L, didn't see it, bought two
Oh,
more tickets to go see it at an AMC. So basically, we made a nice donation to the film community last night,
I respect that.
buying. Yeah, but it ended up being fantastic. I love the theater. We saw it at the Burbank Six, which is my favorite movie theater. Um, I will say there's some people sitting around us that were just being fucking assholes. Like, they were like on their phones. I think they were
Oh,
like going to the bathroom to like hit their vapes or something. It was kind of blowing my mind. So that was unfortunate, but yeah, that was annoying. But the movie itself, like it was fine other than that.
Well, number one, I respect not wanting to see it front row because I think this would be a tough one. Like think about the car chase at the end, trying to look up at that. I mean,
Oh, and it's 3 hours. It's just like I know
oh
that like
no.
this is a big deal to me. I would like to see it in the environment that's comfortable for me, so I actually like can appreciate it.
Yeah, I actually had an interesting, not that interesting. I saw it at AMC. It was like the
Hmm.
Dolby Atmos sound, so maybe that
Yeah.
influenced like how strongly I felt about like the sound and music in this movie are so great. Maybe that's because I saw it in that Dolby environment, which really is impressive at the AMC's. But I did
Hmm.
have a guy right next to me, and he was just laughing so obnoxiously loud at like stuff that wasn't funny. And like I know he was like a big fat guy. I guess it doesn't really matter, but he was also just like inhaling popcorn and soda the entire time. But like
Was it
he
like
would,
performative level laughing almost? Like,
yes,
oh my God, I
that's,
love this guy more than you do, sort
and
of thing?
I'll
Because that
no
drives me
I'll
insane.
I'll give you an example. He laughed so loud and like not a natural laugh at when Leo was watching the Battle of Algiers. I'm like, what is funny about that? Like, I get it. This movie is like a parallel to that. It's like being like, oh, I know, I get this reference. Like, I understand it. I'm like, dude, shut
Yeah.
up. Like, no one cares. But
Yeah,
it
I
was
mean, well,
all throughout.
there's maybe the bit of the joke that it's like, okay, look at the burnout dad watching the History Channel. Like, we all get to that age, I guess, where we start caring about the Battle of Algiers. But
Yeah,
it's a nice, funny moment. But like, you don't need to be like ruining the environment because you're laughing so hard.
he was like laugh out loud at like multiple instances that led me to believe it was a very performative reasons.
Well, here's the tragic thing. So, I guess the metaphor here, if my life is one battle after another, is my love of seeing movies, seeing it in a theater because of the community and the culture of it and the shared experience of it. Lou and I were driving home last night. I'm like, fuck those people. Like, shut the fuck up, turn off your phone. But like when the trailers were going on, there's a guy in front of us who was part of this group. He has Facebook up and like accidentally is like pressing like reels or whatever the equivalent is. So like the sound is going on. I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, just go see this movie, not on opening weekend or whatever. And
Yeah.
so going back to the metaphor, it's like if my revolution is trying to keep movie theaters alive, like theatrical experience alive, my 16-year time jump is I'm like, honestly, I feel like I need to make my own home theater so I don't have to be surrounded by people that ruin these experiences. And then I'm like, well, then I'm just a streamer. I guess I've given up on the fight. You know, I don't really know where to find the middle ground.
There is an answer. Physical media.
Okay. Oh, so do you feel like that actually solves the problem of you're
I
paying out
think
the filmmakers?
I think so. I recently purchased Blu-ray copies of the Halloween franchise, which I think we're going to do an episode about that you don't know about
Mm-hmm.
yet. And man, the quality is good, and that's just Blu-ray. I can't imagine what the 4K is like. And then, yeah, then having a full home theater with the seat. I was having that same thought
Mm-hmm.
last night as this guy just annihilated a large box of popcorn and a large soda. And he's clearing his throat too. Like he just kept clearing his throat over and over again. Oh man, I hate this guy.
Someone was in my seat too. I had to kick a person out. And they're like, "What seat number is it?" I'm like, "It's the one that's on the fucking seat." It
Yeah,
says it right there.
yeah,
Okay, wait. Let's talk. Let's get
yeah,
back to
yeah.
the movie now.
Yeah,
I'm
back
glad
to, yeah.
we could both be our burnout Leo selves in
Yeah.
that moment.
So I'll give you the letterbox stuff, then we'll get right into like
Okay.
production and get right into the movie. So because I think there's a couple interesting things here in the letterbox thing. So as of this morning, September 28th, it has a 4.5 rating, 280K people.
Fire.
That's
Fire.
crazy. 4.5 is crazy. I'll give you the summary. I think the summary has an interesting tidbit in it. Some search for battle, others are born into it. When their evil nemesis resurfaces after 16 years, a band of ex-revolutionaries reunite to rescue the daughter of one of their own. I think that theme of one of their own might come up later. And it has a budget, a kind of a controversial budget, or maybe not controversial. It has kind of an unclear budget of
I was going to
somewhere
bring that
around,
up.
yeah, 130 million, but maybe there's some reports up close to like 180. Just to put it in perspective, like There Will Be Blood only made 76 million, but I think Warner they took the risk knowing that Leo was a big draw, and looks like it's targeting around 20-30 million this opening weekend. And I'm not super good with these box office numbers, so I had to look it up. Like, what's a big opening weekend? And like it put it in totally perspective that I didn't have, which was like Avengers Endgame did 1.2 billion dollars worldwide opening weekend. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's why they're dumping so much money into
Yeah.
these franchises. Like this is doing 20, and it's like, that's nothing compared to this. But for an R-rated, Deadpool and Wolverine did 200 million, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, anything else on that before I get into some quick production things?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll just add. So at this point, it's international box office open is at like 50 million.
Okay.
I don't know that that includes everything for today because we're recording this on a Sunday. So it could end up being as high as 60, 70 million, which I think for one of PTA's quote unquote more art house like film head movies, that I think it would be his biggest opening weekend by far. His biggest box office movie is There Will Be Blood, and I think that made 76 million total.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah,
No, you're
so
good.
this is well on its way to being his biggest movie by far. I'm curious what legs it'll have though. I mean, if it continues to have super high word of mouth review, this year has had some really good like continued box office success for movies that have had that sort of critical response. Like Sinners famously had a huge, I think it had like the all-time lowest drop off in box office in its second weekend. Weapons had a similar run, so I think that could be really exciting for it because I think that there is like a tendency amongst like real film bros like ourselves to be like, well, or at least just online, the discourse, like I'm glad they took the swing, right? Like I love that they like got this, they're successful enough to get this money from the studio and do this thing. I don't care if it bombs. And it's like, yeah, but like anyone with like a business or like relatively businessy background would know it's like the every time that happens, you're just making it less frequent that these level of directors and these types of directors are going to get that chance. So to me, like I'm very much like a practicalist about this or pragmatic about it. Where like I want these things to be huge successes or at least to break even. So if this could end up making, over 200 or 250, like I think that does so much more for the art form than like an Ari Aster Beau is Afraid, which was a bomb. No one really enjoyed it. And I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but it's
Yeah.
like, I think that puts back art house directors so much more than people like to give it credit for.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't really realize that, like, just listening to other podcasts this morning, like, I didn't realize that there was some, like interesting ways that they did, like, that they've been marketing this. Like, there was different versions of the trailer that, like,
Mm-hmm.
they've been marketing this kind of on Leo, and then like social media stuff that like Leo doesn't usually do. But like to your point, I just want it to break even or do well so I get more of these movies. I don't like the
For sure.
marketing side of film, and like I feel like that's more like inside Hollywood stuff. I just didn't even like like I was so excited about it, and everyone who I knew who likes film was excited about it. I didn't realize that like, oh, like it doing 20 million or 30 million in the first weekend domestic, like that's not like what everybody's hoping for. They're probably hoping for much bigger. So I just didn't have that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, but like also I think this is his biggest budget by far too. So it's just
Yeah.
it places the bar that much higher in terms of getting an ROI, especially because like when you hear, let's say that the budget was 150 million, that's what the budget was that the studio likely paid for, right? But that means that in order to break even, if there's like something like a 40% split with the theater, that they actually need to make something closer to $300 million to break even.
Right.
And there's other residual stuff that comes down the pipe that makes a difference with paid video on demand, things like that. But
Well,
it's an interesting calculus.
do you want to guess how much Leo got of that budget?
Oh, I already know how much he got.
20
Worth
mil.
every penny too. 20
Oh yeah,
million. Yeah,
that's sick, man. Like I wish
good
I
for
could.
him.
Yeah, he did a good job. I want to give you one production note stat because I do think it's
Okay.
helpful. Is like what the book is based on. So maybe you looked a little bit into this, but it's Thomas Pynchon's 1990 novel Vineland. Vineland. It's not adapted the same way Inherent Vice is. I actually read Inherent Vice. I did not like it. It's very confusing. I thought I was going to be really cool and smart by reading it, and then it just took me so long, and I was like, I'd never want to read one of these books again. But it was a very straightforward adaptation. I think I appreciated the movie much more because I'm like, oh wow, like that was a tough book to adapt, and he did a good job. This is much more loose. So Vineland is a novel set in 1984 California. It's a former hippie who's raising his teenage daughter. The daughter wants to learn the truth about her mother, who was like a radical filmmaker. But it seems like the buck stops there. There's not much more really about that. Now, the theme of Vineland, I think, is important in understanding One Battle After Another, which is it's not really a about like a single plot in a kind of like very classic Pynchon way. Now I don't know enough to really stand by that statement, but based off what I've read, it's more of like this generational story of like how the ideals of the 60s like eroded into the culture of today, and like the commodification of the 80s. And I think that
Hmm.
part is key into understanding one battle after another, because that's the biggest theme that I seem to land with, of like the passing of the torch. Like, this was my battle when you were, you know, being like a child, and now it's your battle to fight.
Hmm.
But I did think that that little piece of context around the book is important, even though it is more of like a based on and not a full adaptation.
For sure. Yeah. No, that's I would be interested to read the book. I mean, God, I even need to see the movie a second and third time to, like we said, talked about earlier, understand it better. Um, but yeah, yeah, interesting.
Let's start going through it. Let's talk
Yeah,
about it.
let's get into it.
What'd you like?
Um, I
Or
liked a
where do you
lot
want to
about it.
start? Yeah, yeah. You can
Um,
start wherever you want.
yeah, okay. I want to start with, like, we talked about it a bit, like, but just how timely it is. There's a lot of imagery within this that I think is like, it's in some ways obvious, but like its obviousness can almost make it easy to overlook or not talk about. Like, to me, one of the most striking pieces is when we have the time jump. We find out that Sean Penn's character, Lockjaw, is like coming to their town to try and find Willa, and she looks up from their house out in the woods and sees the helicopter overhead, and it cuts to, and you see these army guys sitting in a helicopter, but it just says police across his chest.
Right.
And it's, I think, in some ways like this kind of warning of like, hey, this is what the world could look like, and this is what could be normalized, if there aren't safeguards in place, that these are not law enforcement officers, these are soldiers, and there's a difference between protecting and serving and the training that a soldier gets, which is to kill. And so I thought that was just like a really striking image, that it works on that level, but it also works on the level of, I live in Los Angeles. The National Guard got deployed here several months ago, right? And there's large scale protests about it. So I just found that really, really relevant right now and very timely. And again, it blows my mind just how well timed it is with what's going on. I mean, we were talking about it the other week. Trump was talking about sending the National Guard to Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Like these are really, really relevant right now. So I found that pretty impactful.
Yeah, I thought it was good too. But I thought it wasn't heavy-handed in a way that would date this movie in 20 years. You know, like it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like there was no mention of current political figures. It was just like themes that have been ever present in our culture or in
Totally.
our country for years and years and years. Like, let's say that the first opening act was in, you know, like the mid 2000s. Like, immigration's obviously been always a hot topic. It's just become more of the forefront of the news story, and like the deployment of like militarized forces into these cities. Like, obviously that part of it has become super relevant. But yeah, it's just like there wasn't like a heavy handedness that I feel like I get from a lot of 2025 releases. And like, I'm someone who likes to take just a balanced view of things and like not have to think about that kind of stuff when I go to the movies. So to kind of just like digest it as a story, more than like an ideology that's being pushed out there, I really appreciate it. I thought it was really well done.
Absolutely. Yeah, agreed. Also, this is just like generally speaking, I think I enjoyed every single performance in this movie. I think that's like a pretty common like strength of PTA's movies. Like even the movies that I don't love, personally, like that's just the taste thing. I think that he gets such fantastic actors into all these roles. Like I thought everyone was lights out. I
Yeah.
think it's so interesting what Leo continues to choose to do with the roles that he selects. And it's like, obviously he is one of our greatest and like most celebrated actors.
Yeah.
He's, both like incredible, but also he's been rewarded for it. But I also think Benicio del Toro as the sensei is just incredible in every scene that he's in. I think it's notable too that like Leo, as well as being like a burnout and kind of a loser and like paranoid in some ways, he doesn't really accomplish anything in this movie, despite like he's kind of supposed to be. He's marketed as the hero. He's like on the poster. Most of the movie's following him or Sean Penn, but I thought it was notable too that ultimately like he just gets saved over and over again by people of color who are essentially members of the actual um, oppressed communities that just have a better, because of that they have an experience that he sort of doesn't have, even if he was within the French 75. And you could say that I'm inferring a little bit here, but I think it was intentional. But at the same time, I do think there's like a nice middle ground of like, although Leo in a lot of ways is the fool in this movie. He still at the end of the movie shows up for his daughter. He still ultimately is necessary for their triumph. And I thought that that was like kind of a beautiful metaphor of like there's going to be misunderstandings. There's going to be a naivety to like certain groups that are trying to help, with progress, and sometimes it will require the like thankless task of supporting this buffoon through his day to day and not getting captured. But
Yeah.
ultimately, like those efforts are necessary for us all to move forward. I
Yeah.
thought that was my reading of it, at least.
Yeah, and I think like his like he laid the foundation for Willa, right? Like yeah, he says it himself, like the years of drug abuse, his brain's pretty fried. And like to the point I was trying to make with Vineland is like the generational passing of the torch. Like it's no longer his battle, I think is really the
Mm-hmm.
point. So like he laid the foundation, he tried to protect her, he enrolled her in karate classes and whatever, and you see her, when she's kicking that bag, she's got a strong kick, really like
Yeah.
kind of a Joe Rogan esque like punch there. But like,
I'm sure that's how she would describe it too.
oh yeah, that's what they wanted you to take away from this. No, but yeah, it's just like I'm glad that he missed the shot, right? Like and throughout the movie, he's like you keep thinking that like oh he's gonna remember the code. No, like he's like,
Mm-hmm.
but then he finds like a workaround, or like when the cars drive by each other, you think he's gonna spot her, but no, he's just like he doesn't get those classic hero tropes. And even like when he's lining up the sniper shot, I'm like oh he's about to snipe Sean Penn. No, he misses both shots.
Yeah.
But like I just did really appreciate that because I think it just fed into the theme. And then you mentioned Benicio. I think he was literally perfect. I mean, if there is a
Yeah.
case to make for someone for best supporting, like this would be what I would stand behind. I know I haven't even really seen a lot of 2025 movies, so I don't really have any. Like it's more of just personal preference. I just really like him, but there's something that he nailed so well, and maybe it's just his heritage or like life experiences, but like that Latin community, the that special bit, like that family atmosphere of like. And there's one scene that I think is so perfect. Like it made me like emotional. It's like when they're frantically, like Leo's trying to find his charger and he's bringing him into the house, and like he's stopping to introduce him to all the little kids and the cousins and the aunts and uncles. Like Benicio is just like he never wavers from like what you'd expect from that character. And I just think he does it so well. It's just it was really such a bright spot. And to your original point, it just goes back to the performances. I don't think there was a miss in the performances. I mean, we talked about all the
Mm-hmm.
characters that are likable. What about the ones that are not likable? I mean, Sean Penn's the obvious one, but like that interrogator, like I don't, and that guy's never been like in anything. I almost feel like they just got, I don't know, but maybe they just got him from the military because he was so
Mm-hmm.
believable as that interrogator. It was like
Or the Christmas
scary.
adventurers are
Yeah,
like so good. And I grew up in like the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. My family was in real estate, right? Like I've met everyone at that table except for maybe like the eldest guy.
yeah,
But
he
like
is.
they're all sitting there with their Patagonia and like their Vineyard Vine style like sweaters. It's like I know all of those guys and
Oh,
they're
and the
playing the
corp.
parts.
Oh, sorry, but I was
No,
going to say,
no,
and
no.
the corporate speak, because we know that part of it too. How they're saying
For
so much without
sure.
saying anything.
Oh my God. Yeah, that is incredible too. But just I want to say because you just added, but like Benicio del Toro's calm through everything. Like yes, it's supposed to be he's a sensei and he's a civic leader, but like
Right.
what I made that point earlier about like it's people of color, people from communities that are oppressed are the ones that are guiding him. It's because like yes, Leo was in this group 15 years ago and he gets by with a little bit of clout for mentioning that, but
Yeah.
like he hasn't been in the fight. And like, I think part of why Benicio del Toro is so calm is because, like, in a sense, this is like business as usual for them. This is not something that ever stopped, right? Like, Leo had the ability to kind of just walk away from it all. And, like, yes, he's been paranoid, but, like, on a day to day level, he's not getting harassed by anybody. He just looks like a white guy that's kind of burned out. And so, yeah, I just thought that was a really incredible scene, too. Also, just like the way Benicio del Toro delivers every line, like, there's like a weirdly zenness, but also there's kind of this kind of like cheeky, like tongue-in-cheek humor energy he's got going. It was like, yeah, we kind of got like a Latino Harriet Tubman situation going on.
Yeah.
It's such a hilarious way to like self-referentially talk about the fact that they're, getting these people to safety and to employment.
There's one line that he just delivers it so perfectly, and it's more of just like a dad kind of line, where like when he picks Leo up from the hospital, he's like, "Come on, let's do a selfie." Like just the way he said, like no one in our generation ever says, "Let's do a selfie," but like that's such a thing
Yeah,
that my dad would say.
forgot
Like my
about
dad would never
that.
ask for a selfie, but if he did, that's how he would say it.
Well, also, I mean, my favorite quote, normally we say this at the end, but I think my favorite line is when he does get pulled over and he's doing the little dance
Yeah, yeah,
for like, yeah, for drinking and driving. They're like, have you had anything to drink? He's like, yeah, I've had a few drinks. And
yeah,
but he's like kind of giddy again. It's like this kind of like childlike little like, uh-oh, what did I do? And they're like, couple what? And he's like, few, like couple little beers. Just like,
yeah.
no, who calls it that? But I thought that was excellent. Okay, I have another thing I want to bring up unless you have something else you want to add.
No, I was gonna take us kind of back to the beginning. I want to get your thoughts on the beginning, because like if
Hmm.
there is like a part that I wasn't as like locked into, I'd just say it'd probably be the first like act, if you want to call it that. I mean,
Yeah,
once the raid on the town happens, like it's a full on roller coaster ride to the end. Like it's just like, and that
yeah,
is like some of the best filmmaking I've ever seen, of like that to the end. But the opening, like the setup, I wanted to, like, before we got too deep into it, come back to and get your thoughts on. Um, maybe we go there quickly, and then we can come back to what
yeah.
you had.
I thought it was really effective. I think that Tiana Taylor as Perfidia Beverly Hills is like
Yeah,
incredible in all, like every scene that she's in. She's like just feels so in control, so powerful. I thought it was like a really, I don't know, like I'm not going to phrase this well, but I think you're going to understand what I mean. Like, I think in the last 15 years, there's been like, for great reasons, a larger push to show like powerful women in a lot of media in general. And I think that there's times where people have felt like, hey, this feels more like you were writing to try and display that rather than like you've created a character that had those traits, you know?
yeah,
And anywho, I just mean to say, like, I think Tiana Taylor is so powerful and like brings such an interesting and like believable take on like this new version of like not just femininity, but like feminism and like aggression out of like a woman character that I just don't think it would be. I think in less skilled hands, it would have been not believable. And
yeah,
instead, like I really did believe this was a woman who like was charged up and horny when she did these things, broke the law. And like, I don't think that's the only reason she did it. But I just think there was so much nuance to her portrayal of that, her portrayal of being a new mother and like the animosity she feels towards her child and how that's very confusing. And I think also just like what PTA economically, time wise, how much of that character he's able to show in so few shots, I think is also just really, really impressive. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. I definitely preferred after the time jump just because I think it's a little less jittery, a little less like I mean, it's definitely still propulsive, but like those first couple sequences, we're essentially seeing them commit, 4 or 5 major attacks, for lack of a better word, within, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. And so that, that's just far more condensed than the rest of the movie. So, um, I will say also, I really did enjoy, I didn't enjoy, I found the car chase sequence when they're leaving that bank really effective. Like I
yeah,
closed my eyes before they get into the accident because it's it just felt so real in the moment.
yeah.
Um, but it's also so intense at times that like I want to go back to that right away? Like maybe not.
No, no. There was a couple of great crash. I mean, the other great crashes at the end when she parks the car on the other side of that hill. Like
Yeah,
it was super realistic, just like, yeah, electric scenes there. I do want to talk about, because you said talked about that the kind of, and I hadn't thought about this until you brought it up, of like I guess the push in these past 10 years of like girl power, girl boss, whatever, where it's like a Gal Gadot beating up like 35 guys at once, you know? This
yeah,
felt
just
much more like this was like she was in full control every like, and I don't,
for
maybe this is just
sure.
like guys talking about powerful women in movie, like whatever. But like I feel exactly what I think you were trying to say there, of like yeah, there was not a single moment that I questioned whether she would have been in control of those situations, you know?
For sure. And like maybe a better way to say it, like one of my favorite female performances of any movie I've ever seen in my life is Emily Blunt in Sicario. And I think that part of why is because it's like I don't think to me what like a powerful anybody is, but like let alone a woman, is like a scene where it's like a woman beating up 25 guys. It's like, that's not, well, like, she's a superhero. So it's, that to me
Yeah.
isn't like femininity and like enabling her. That's just giving her superpowers. To me, it's like Emily Blunt is in a movie where she is at all times aware of the danger that she's in, of the power dynamics of these are bigger men that could do what they want. Like, these are really scary things. And despite that, she's powerful. And despite that, she still does her best to do what she thinks is right, and despite the confusion. Like, I feel the same way about Tiana Taylor. Like, I don't, she has a lot of animosity, and honestly, I'm sure she could knock me the fuck out. So I think she also is physically strong, but I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but
It
those are the
does.
things that to me make it more not just believable, but like inspiring.
It does, and she has all the power. She has the great scenes where she's in control of Sean Penn, but then they also give her these great scenes of like the emotional vulnerability, and like some more like traditional female perspectives, like when the baby is born and you hear about like the how she doesn't feel like loved anymore, and like all the
Mm-hmm.
focus is on that. Like that's stuff like that. Those are things I've heard like happens to women like post,
Postpartum, yeah.
postpartum, yeah. So I just thought that was such a great scene to like show that like vulnerable side of her as well. And then like you got also like that's just great acting from Leo of like him rocking the baby, and he's like, "Yo, like why are you going out right now?" So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
but
one
that
last piece I'll say on
yeah.
it too also is like, I think like another way in which, in some way, like in media and entertainment, we've gotten, I think, better with portraying certain versions of like strong femininity. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, it's not the idea that just because I'm a woman I can't be emotional. It's that like I can embrace my emotions and that can give me strength. I think similarly, it's like, it's not that I'm like the female character, and maybe a version of trying to put them on a pedestal in the past was like, I don't need a man, right? But like, I think that this is the opposite, and I found a lot more truth in her being like, no, like, I want to hook up, I want to have sex, like, this turns me on, and also that isn't everything I am, and also that doesn't contain me. Like,
Well,
I think that to me again is like a more real version. But sorry, what were you gonna say?
her mom says something that I just remember where she's a revolution, like she's a runner and you're a stump or something like that. Like
Yeah,
that's really what it comes down to. Is it's not that she didn't want to be a mother or like didn't love Leo or didn't love the baby. I felt like it was just like she's a revolutionary and like she was gonna keep fighting, and
yeah.
and a baby wasn't gonna change that.
Or I mean, it's that, and she's a human, and she's flawed, and she's like afraid of these feelings, and sometimes it's convenient to use these like revolutionary talking points and not confront your feelings. She can be
Yeah.
great at some things and really not great at others, and that is what real life is more like.
Well, and while we're on the topic of her, because I don't know if she'll come back up, like I thought it was really interesting that then she doesn't get to be the hero of the story. I thought she was gonna come
Mm-hmm.
back and save him at the end, and I was glad that that didn't happen. I thought they were gonna reunite in Mexico, and that was gonna be the final rendezvous, and like I'm glad that didn't happen. And then I thought it was interesting that she then gets branded as the rat, and like no one wants to tell Willa, and then Willa gets to kind of like reconcile with that. Like I just thought that was a really great way to do that.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, couple other things I do want to make sure to touch
Sure.
on, because
Yeah.
just because we talked about it earlier. I think that like the French 75, like clearly they're very interested in immigration and like fascist, regimes, and like human rights in general. But like, I also view that as like, a lot of their members are Black women, and I feel like that is clearly a part of their like empowerment and their message. But then, kind of separately, a lot of the movie, I mean, that opening sequence again is about immigration. But like, once we get into this town and we see the kind of the riot that is like spurred on by the police,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of the language of like revolution in this is more so, I think, viewed through the lens of immigration,
Mm-hmm.
and using that as a talking point to like do the things that you actually want to do to further oppression. But anyway, I just think it's like, it's cool to see that there's the French 75, they're this revolutionary group, but like clearly entirely separate from that, there is this group that Benicio del Toro has put together to help these people get to freedom, to safety, to all that. And it really reminded me of the Nemec manifesto from Andor. So I just want to read the portion of that manifesto that I think is most relevant, which is: remember this, freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea they've already enlisted in the cause. And I think that that's super true in what gets depicted in this is like yeah, there's a revolution and yeah, there's people like fighting, but like these people honestly, a lot of them have no idea that each other exists, but they're still trying to do the same thing. And I think for them to just like self-originate that goal speaks to some of the human condition and like wanting betterment and wanting progress. And I just found that very moving in the movie.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting too is like on I'm just gonna say on the Big Picture podcast. Now we're a podcast talking about another
Our
podcast. Can we,
rival.
yeah, should we? No. What if we abandon the fact that we'll never be their rival and we just talk about their episodes? It's like
Oh,
a
for sure.
where they watch like when it's like a watch along thing. But
Yeah, it's
Sean,
like like The Talking Dead or something. Like right
yeah,
after the episode, we
yeah,
break it down.
the small picture. No.
Yeah, yeah.
So Sean was like, why didn't they market this better to like black audiences? And I was thinking about that, and like honestly, like it's like the it's more of like a Latin American story than anything. I think like Benicio del Toro's role in it, and like that community leader, and like the like I don't remember what it said, the Latin Harriet Tubman or whatever. Like that part, like the strong black characters are great in the film, but they're just kind of part of this broader revolution that seems to be mostly focused on immigration. I think the real core audience that like will really appreciate this, especially some of the little things Benicio's doing, like the really like cultural like nuances, like introducing Leo to all the family members, you know, the little storefronts at
Mm-hmm.
the bottom of that house,
Constantly
like,
crushing some Modelo's.
yeah, crushing those Modelo's. No, but like I think that will resonate more with like a Latin American audience, especially with what's going on today in terms of
Mm-hmm.
immigration. So I just thought
Yeah,
that was interesting.
yeah, I would love to see it be successful in like obviously not just the box office, but like if that like could because I do think a movie like this, and maybe we should have talked about this at the top, but like I think this is such an incredible like depict like instance of art that could actually really be unifying, could affect change, could introduce people to ideas they hadn't really seriously considered. And so I mean, I don't know, like we do a lot of talking on this podcast about like just the movies that we love, right? And there's nothing wrong with like seeing Pirates of the Caribbean 2 and wanting to talk about that for 20 years because that movie rocks also, but like
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily bring about change in the world in the way that I think truly a movie like this can, which is just so exciting that also that we have a movie maker with PTA's skill that like is even interested in doing that. Cause you know, he could he could make movies like Phantom Thread and The Master, which are also like have their own insights to be gleaned, but not in an immediate sense like this one clearly does.
Well, maybe Dead Man's Chest didn't really get into it, but I think On Strange Tides really got into the deep.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I don't even remember that one.
Yeah, when they talk about the incel movement in yeah.
Right. Man, where do we go from here? I mean, there's two big like scenes. Like the two big highlights of the movie for me are just like the escape from Leo's house in the woods, you know, into the dojo and all the funny stuff that happens in the dojo, into like the escape and him falling off the roof, which was just like a jaw open, you know, moment in the film,
Mhm.
into the hospital, into him escaping in the hospital, getting picked back up with Benicio. They do the selfie. I actually picked up one thing on there is like one of the doctors calls him Bob, even though he hasn't given his name yet. So like it's kind of a
Yeah.
little tip off.
Mhm.
Like that to me, like that whole scene, and then just like the ride it takes you on after, that really made the movie to me. Like what else really stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've spoken to a lot of the big things that meant a
Yeah.
lot to me. I want to say Chase Infinity as Willa Ferguson is also, I think, just really, really good in this role. You know, the fact that really her filmography, like this is her first major film. I know she was in Presumed Innocent earlier this year, which was good, but I don't know. I think that she like the task on her shoulders of having to like act alongside Leo, Champagne, and Benicio for PTA is like pretty crazy. So I think that she does a really excellent job. Again, also like in a more reactionary part too, which you know I think it just would be really easy for her character to kind of get bowled over or like come off flat, and that's never the case.
I will say there's one moment where I got worried, and it was their first scene. And then in listening to the podcast where they talk to PTA and Leo, that was the first part parts of the movie that they shot in that house in the
Mm,
woods. I just thought yeah, I was a little worried after that of like, oh no, like they maybe should have gotten someone more experienced. She turned it right around, and like, who am
yeah.
I to judge her? And her acting capabilities. By the end, when she shoots the Christmas Adventure and lets off that scream, I was like, that this is the best performance. Like I was so all in on her. Like I felt bad even like hate. Like I didn't even. But it was just like I had this thought when we first started. Is like she just felt more like kind of like your typical like Gen Z actress in a 2025 movie. Just in some of those like lines of dialogue in that first scene with Leo, turned it right around right away. And it could have just been like the jitters of acting across like one of the greatest of our lifetime. And
Hmm.
who could get upset at her for that? I mean, yeah,
Yeah. I will say honestly, I don't want to. I was going to say this at the beginning that I completely spaced. Because I've been so into this conversation. But honestly, there was part of me that going into this was like, I kind of maybe want this to be a short episode because I do truly think that there's like a lot of like really, really important nuance to like what this is talking about. And I do think the topics are more than just, again, dead man's chest. Like these are like real world stakes where like, yes, parts of this are of course fabricated, but like there are kids that have been separated from their parents and are like, that opening sequence, we see them with like the mylar, like aluminum foil looking blankets that they've made a ball with in these cages that they're, pushing around. And so I don't know. I just think that like this is like a really important movie, or at least the topics within it are really important. So I just don't want to take them lightly in some
yeah.
way.
But I don't feel like it's like a polarizing movie. Like I don't feel like if you're a Republican, you shouldn't go see this, And that's what I like
Mm-hmm.
so much about it. Like I definitely agree with you. I think it's super poignant and topical and relevant.
Yeah.
But also just respect so much that he was able to tell this story without being like, I think I used the term heavy-handed earlier, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
it's so easy, especially when like the answer is should be so obvious to everybody that this is bad and going on right
Yeah,
now, to be heavy-handed, and he just wasn't. And I just
for
really
sure.
appreciated that.
And I think also like the fact that he wasn't afraid to point out the weaknesses of the quote unquote good guys. Like the every
Yeah.
organization, like he's trying to get this password, he's trying to get to his daughter. They called him. He has the first three passwords. Like he just doesn't have the fourth or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's like that's just like indicative of like, yeah, they're the quote unquote good guys, but like they're still dickheads that are like going to be rule followers that need things to be to a T. And I think it just points out it's like these organizations are ultimately comprised of and run by humans, and the human experience is that there's going to be assholes, there's going to be stupidity, and so I thought that was just like a nice way of being like, hey, it's not like there's going to be bad people in all these groups. I mean, even like Perfidia killing the security guard in the beginning, it's like, I don't know, do you think that that guy who was just working as a security guard at a bank was like the person causing these problems in the world? No, like he just showed up to clock in and get his bread for the day too.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a nice way to like find a middle ground of sorts. Like I think he wasn't unfair with how he depicted that.
Yeah, or Perfidia ratting everybody out and then getting to escape into
Mm-hmm.
Mexico, and then that's it. You don't see her again. She has to go live a totally different life. Like it just everything that had like a counterbalance.
I do want to ask, and then I do have some nitpicks I have saved for the
So do
end.
yeah, so do I. I got a couple more
But
good things that I want to do. Just a
same.
couple like quick notes on good things. I think we talked about the core stuff, but yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, actually, this is just random. I thought that all of her friends were really good actors. I
Me
found
too.
like the high schoolers were like really solid. I liked their scenes. I also the thing I actually wanted to point out was just the Christmas Adventurers. I think we could do our own whole pod on this. I do think in a way, like to me actually it was kind of like giving a little bit of Get Out, like just the idea of like this kind of like secretive suburbia like group that's clearly all about actually like racial extermination and cleansing. But I just thought that was a crazy scene. I thought those actors were incredible. One of the craziest like quotes to me in the movie, I might have said it earlier, but when he talks about he's like, well, like I want you to clean it up, the old man. And he's like,
Yeah,
clean it up. He's like, it should be spotless. We should be able to eat off the floor. Like he says it in this
yeah,
kind of like smiling, but also vacant eyed, like soulless way. And I think it's whoever that guy is, unbelievable one scene performance.
Yeah, and he didn't shake his hand. He hadn't said a word yet. It's like it's just you see the corporate structure of like, oh, Bill's gonna go ahead and talk through the approach, and then and
Yeah,
then at the
yeah.
very end, he's the senior partner in the room who puts the
Yeah, and
hammer down. He's like,
Francis will shoot you to death if you don't
yeah,
succeed at this.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's just I loved the power structure that was shown throughout, like without describing it or explaining who's head honcho. It comes off so clearly, and he just lays down that hammer. Yeah, at the end. Um,
Um,
Go ahead.
I also like that they don't. There's not really a comeuppance for them. They still entirely exist by the end of the movie. Two of their members have been killed. That's it. They're still entirely in charge and in power, as far as we really know.
Yeah, only
Um,
only the guy hunting her and Sean Penn gets their comeuppance. And
yeah.
I'm glad that like she gives him that test. He fails. She takes the shot, no question. Like when he reached for his gun, I was like, please no. Like I loved how they
Hmm.
tied that out. Maybe we'll talk about in the nitpicks about like what you thought about Sean Penn's second life. I don't know. That's something I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. Like, did you think that was necessary for him to get two deaths
I
there?
was going to ask about that. I think it ends up working out. I didn't have a problem with it. I thought there was. Oh, actually, I guess I would point this out. I think it's really like well done how they have Sean Penn. Like, there's like the obvious version of his like repression and his needing to overcompensate. Overcompensating, I think, is the go-to word I would use to define Stephen J. Lockjaw,
Mm-hmm.
because he's jacked, but like he's
Yeah.
all of the shots where he and Willa are in the car together. Like she's almost taller than him when they're sitting, and I just feel like
Yeah.
there's like an intentional like, yeah, this guy's like scary and he's like an army bro, but like you can feel this energy of like he's ultimately still kind of small and like it feels like he's kind of trying to make up for that by being jacked.
The
And
tight
he
shirt.
like the tight shirt gets called out, the fact that he's
Yeah.
seemingly getting pegged by Perfidia, which is like, no judgment, do your thing, but it's like obviously that's not something he's comfortable with anybody knowing about outside of
Oh,
that room.
with a pistol too, which is ballsy.
Insane.
Yeah. What
But I
about
just
just
thought it
like
was effective.
I just thought that scene with we didn't really touch on it much of just like the cinematography, but because it kind of goes without saying in a Paul Thomas
Yeah.
Anderson, but this just that church setting for that kind of showdown and
Oh
the
yeah.
DNA test and that like that long that room. I mean, that was just I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, that was excellent. I mean, we could go on and on about it. There's just so much here, but I did find it really moving. I'm just thrilled that like this movie seems to be, knock on wood, it's having the opening that it's having. So I would love to see it continue to get viewed. I would love to see this movie again, despite it being 2 hours 50 minutes. I was not looking at my watch at any point. Um, I think I don't know. I think with every PTA movie, I've come to appreciate it substantially more
Yeah.
after the first watch, and so I'm curious to see how this will play out with that as
I,
well.
I agree with you. I'm also someone who's typically into car chases, and it was a great car chase. Like that was such an
Hmm.
exciting chase at the end. Can I give you like a couple quick tidbits, then we can move into maybe some
Yes.
nitpicks somewhere? So not tidbits, it's just like kind of the miscellaneous notes that we didn't get to. Um, so they talked about in the podcast how like they didn't have that scene scripted at the end, like that car chase at the end. It kind of just came together once they saw the road. Like when they saw the dips in the road, it kind of wrote itself.
Hmm.
I thought that was fascinating. Like to not
Wow,
to
that's
like
crazy.
just start filming and like have that come together based off of a location. Also want to say shout out Mo Bamba.
That was an incredible needle drop.
Bro, how good also was the sound? Like that sounded like every high school dance, or I guess for us, our age group, like every college nightclub or frat party when you're
Yeah.
kind of like she's in the bleachers and you hear like
Oh yeah.
it was almost perfect of like what Mo
Yeah, like kind
Bamba
of
would be.
echoey. Like that they've got two big speakers somewhere, and if you're
Yeah,
sitting behind the stands, you're just getting the echoes at that point.
yeah, absolutely perfect. And then one thing that Leo said in the interview at the end of that podcast was that he used Dog Day Afternoon as a reference point, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know if you've seen
Mm.
that,
I haven't
but
seen it's high on my list.
you gotta watch it. There's a lot of like franticness of talking on the phone that Al Pacino does, and like when he said that, it just blew my mind. I'm like, oh, of course, like that was so like him at those payphones is so Dog Day, and Pacino is so great in that movie. If anyone else hasn't seen it, I would definitely recommend.
Okay, that's fantastic.
Let's
Yeah,
move.
I just need like 2 months to digest this, and then I'm sure I'll have a list that's like 1,000 more items I want to talk about. But
Smart,
let's talk
yeah.
about a couple things that maybe we didn't like as much, or at least have questions about.
Yeah, you want me to start or do you want to start?
Yeah, you kick it off.
Well, I thought just the fight, like the fact that they were able to fight the resistance for so long without getting caught was interesting. Like I know it was like 2000 mid 2000s, but like they had
Hmm.
cameras, like they were able to
Yeah.
do like some really bad stuff. Like I'm like, how did they get away with the first thing, And then like they were like blowing up like power stage towers and stuff. I'm like, wow,
Hmm.
like and then when she's like taking the mask, I know that was the point. Like she takes the mask off, she's like, look at my face, I don't care, when they're robbing that bank or whatever. I was like, wow, that is like really bold. I already talked about Willa's first scene, but I think she turned it around. I really do just think like that was probably their first day of shooting, and she's going toe to toe with Leo. I think my
Hmm.
big flaw that I'll pause on, and we can talk about a little bit about is maybe the Indian guy going back. I don't know. Like I know they set that up where like he doesn't want to kill a kid, and I know they planted the seed earlier. The Christmas Adventurers say like, oh, like he can't be trusted. He's not homegrown. But like I just thought it was a lot for him to do. If you're a bounty hunter, like they didn't have much of a relationship in the car that would have led me to think that like
Yeah.
he's gonna go. And I know, and I'm not saying like make the movie longer, give him more of a backstory, but like I really think the only trigger was like that, like kind of country redneck racist guy was like, a lot of firewater you're drinking, you freaking Indian, and like it's like that like
Yeah.
triggers him to be like, I'm gonna kill everybody and then die in the process. I'm like, I don't know about that,
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it would have been nice. Yeah, just something to kind of indicate, even if there was like during the scene where he captures that radio broadcaster guy, like maybe a little colonel or something. But at the same time, I don't know. I guess I don't hate it or I don't hate it at all. But I think there's also just a breaking point. Like I think to him more so, it's like they're gonna kill this girl. I just can't, like, how much further can I go? Like, I'm not the one pulling the trigger, but like, might as well be if I'm dropping her off with
Yeah,
these dudes that are like tatted up, like face. Yeah, I can't remember what he said on his forehead. I
me
don't know if it was
either.
like relentless or something.
Something like that. And
Um,
ultimately I like it because it sets up a great chase at the end, and her being
mhm.
zip tied, and like it is what it is. I love this. I give it 5 stars. I really did like this movie, and I don't even want like, especially with the 2025 movie, when I'm like I've not been so up on like this decade of movie releases. Like I don't want to pick little nits like that, but I just thought it was a big leap to make without knowing much about this guy, for him to like sacrifice his life for her. But okay, fine.
All right, I'll rattle through mine really quick.
Go
Just
ahead.
feel free, if there's any that pique your interest, we can talk about them.
Okay.
But I don't think we have to for all of them. One, could they really go back to their old home after all this?
Good
I
point.
feel like at this point they're probably, the jig is up that these are fake identities and someone would have probably heard. Um,
True.
Next, how did the Christmas adventurer assailant find Willa? They're all just driving at this point. Maybe I guess he has an awareness of the Native American guy, so he would know the white car, maybe see her driving, but a little bit of a nitpick.
Oh yeah,
Um,
true. You mean like I guess he probably
After
knew.
she escapes,
Right. He pulls
you
up.
know,
Yeah, he pulls up behind. I mean, I guess there's
because he
not a lot
doesn't
of
even
cars.
know.
Yeah, there's not a lot of cars on that road. And he is tracking. I think he's actually, what I think is, I think he's tracking the Indian. Like I don't think, or the bounty hunter. I
Mm,
keep calling him the Indian. But like I think he doesn't know that she's driving that car. He's trying to tie all the loose ends. He kills Sean Penn, and then now he's going to take out the bounty hunter. That's what I
yeah.
thought. But still, how does he catch up with him? I'm not sure.
Um,
Wait, on the
this
Secret
is
Society, I have one too. Though on the Secret Society, like they're
yeah.
terrible at their job. If they're vetting him for 15 years and like they just find this piece of information that's like literally like a cornerstone of their tenets is like no interracial anything. Like they found it out because there was an interview 15 years ago where one of the
Mhm.
other people said that he had a relationship. But like, how did they miss that for that long? I didn't understand that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's just a lot of evidence. I mean, I'm sure like there's mountains of evidence when there's, the French 75 are blowing places up. This is one random member whose name is Jungle Pussy. It's like, how much can we believe this girl's anything necessarily?
Fair.
Okay, another one. I just can't stand Alana Haim. Glad she got murked early.
Okay.
I wish Leo was just a little bit less of a burnout at the beginning, because he just seems like he's like completely non-existent even as a father, and maybe just like even some semblance of like he's showing up. I don't know. I wish there was a little bit maybe a different.
Yeah, I,
Maybe
I
I'll come
should.
to feel differently.
I actually know what you're saying about that. I hadn't thought about it before, but like, yeah, him having a late night with the boys and coming back, like, I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
he seems more of like a chill at home, watch a movie kind of guy.
Yes. Agreed. the convent feels a little underdeveloped. Like it kind of is like, what benefit does this have to the story? What benefit does it need? But it's like, it's a moment where she gets taken from one place to another. There's the sequences of her shooting guns and boxing a little bit, but it just doesn't feel super explored to me in the way that I think it could have. And then the last one is just Willa shooting her dad, or almost shooting Leo at the end. I'm like, I feel like she would know to not shoot him. I think she'd be pretty thrilled to see him. So
Yeah.
that was a
I,
little confusing to me.
I had that same feeling. I guess the counter would be she's been through so much. Who can she trust? She didn't like he was supposed
Yeah.
to be her dad, and she just found out an hour ago that he wasn't even her dad. So she's just like
Mm-hmm.
literally not taking any chances. So that would be the counter. I also feel the same way you do.
Um, but yeah, those are all silly little things. Overall, really enjoyed it. Excited to watch it again in the near future. Um, do we want to talk about where this sits amongst our favorite PTA films? I know
Yeah,
we've both been watching a lot of PTA in preparation for this.
yeah. Let's do that, and let's wrap it up and give a conclusion. I mean, we're at an hour right now. We had a good conversation.
Okay, why don't you kick it off? I got to pull up my list.
Okay, so PTA ranking. I think my number one is still There Will Be Blood. I think that's going to be hard to beat. My number two is now this. I think this is,
Okay.
and when I'm talking about PTA ranking, I'm maybe it's technical prowess, maybe it's just my personal favorites, but like I don't know, it's just my ranking of like PTA's movies. Take it or leave it, and I think this is number two. Number three, I have Phantom Thread. I really just connected with that story. I really like Phantom Thread. I actually want to rewatch that again soon. Number four, I have Magnolia. I want to talk to you briefly about Magnolia, but maybe this is not the episode. I really liked Magnolia. I know it's a bit of a sprawling mess. I know he's even been on record saying that he should have cut a lot of time from it. I just really resonated with a couple of those stories and characters. I really liked it.
I
And my
vibe
number
with Magnolia so hard.
Okay, good, good. My number five is Boogie Nights. I think you like Boogie Nights maybe a little bit more than me. I
Yeah.
like it. It's Goodfellas in the porn industry. Okay, cool. I'm with it. I like Magnolia a little bit better, and I stand by that. So that'd be my top five. What about you?
Yeah, I would say Boogie Nights is my number one.
Yeah.
I think the first time I saw it, like I was like, yeah, I enjoy it. I'm not really sure what like the crazy cult phenomenon that this movie is or has been is, but then having rewatched it a couple times since, I'm like, I could see how you could make this movie your personality for a little bit. If from just like the soundtrack alone, I think it's unbelievable. But
How
yeah,
many times
Boogie
have you
Nights
rewatched The Last Shot?
of when he shows off how just why he is a star, what makes him a star,
Yeah, I mean
hundreds of
just
times.
yeah,
Yeah, I just have that as a GIF.
yeah.
Um, so
Poster.
Boogie Nights would be number one. There Will Be Blood. I could see this being my new number three. I think, yeah, just time will tell. I think it's so hard for me to know right off the bat. I would say probably Magnolia is my next favorite, so that's like my fourth favorite. I love God, I love Tom Cruise in it. That's another great line too in this movie, Benicio del Toro.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Fearless, like fucking, like Tom fucking Cruise is
yeah,
just so funny knowing that PTA has worked with him.
yeah.
And then probably Punch Drunk Love. I just think it's
Okay.
such a kooky, weird movie. I love Adam Sandler in it. And I'd say like the remaining four movies, like The Master and Phantom Thread, are movies that like I respect, but don't necessarily like. I never felt the itch to rewatch them. I didn't necessarily like enjoy them in an entertainment sense.
Yep.
And then Inherent Vice and Licorice Pizza, I honestly just didn't really care for at all.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask you that, but you already answered it. Is like if
Yeah.
are there any movies of his that you just would not watch again? I think for me, it's only Hard Eight, just because like I got it. Like it's kind of one dimensional. It's like it's
Mm-hmm.
a great first movie. Like that's super impressive to be that old and be able to make a movie like that. I could never. I've already passed the age range where I could even try, but it's just I got everything I needed from that one watch of that. Everything else I think I'd run back. Like I didn't have a great time with Punch Drunk Love. I gave it like 3 stars. I would watch it again because
Mm-hmm.
like I know there's more there that I probably missed. Um, yeah, I just, and that's what I think I like so much about Paul Thomas Anderson is that his movies really are timeless, and you can just spend more and more time with them and pick up on new things. I was also going to ask you about like Leo performances and like where this
Mm-hmm.
one fits in. And maybe this is a harder question because like it's maybe hard to think back on films like specific performances within films, when you're talking about an actor. But this is a
Yeah,
list that I've maintained on my side. So I wanted to see if you had any thoughts about like Leo
I
performances.
I don't have like a stack ranking here, but I will say, I think every actor, almost like an athlete, tends to have a toolkit of just things that they can pull out on an like, in a pinch. And like whether that's an impression, a voice, a reaction, an energy, a volume, like Philip Seymour Hoffman, one of his greatest strengths is he could just bring the energy, and a part of that was like his volume of yelling, and like the depth of his voice when he did it.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of Leo's like most like S tier, who else can do this but him, is his charisma. And like Wolf of Wall Street, he's using that 100%. He's so charming. There's like a weirdly a boyish energy to it, and like an
Mm-hmm.
attraction to it. And like there's again sort of like a kind of a mischievousness to it, but like all of these things blend together to make him this person that you really want to just look at and listen to, and you want him to be telling you the truth. And you're not getting that in this role necessarily. So, but I think for what is asked of him, this movie made me think a lot of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like he's definitely like a guy in the downswing, right? And
Like a
it's almost
softer.
like yeah, it's softer. It's kind of like Rick Dalton meets The Big Lebowski. Of just like he's kind of existing in his life. He's reacting to everything. Even when he was in like the quote unquote prime of his life in the prelude sequence, he's being called out for like he doesn't know what he's doing. He looks like he's lost, I think is what
Yeah.
the mother says to him. And so he's just a very reactionary character throughout it all. So I think that in some ways it holds him back from being like the big energetic person that even like, Benicio del Toro gets to be in the movie. But I think it's a terrific performance from Leo. It just doesn't necessarily have all of the things that I think could make it my favorite of his performances, but I still think it's terrific. If he got a nom for it, I would not be upset. I would just say, it's probably in the middle of my favorite Leo movies,
Yeah. Fair enough.
at least in terms of just his performance specifically.
I think it might be one where, like, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I watch it again and I'm just watching for Leo, and there's so many
Absolutely.
little things I pick up. But if I had to rank them, Once Upon a Time is definitely still my number one, Leo. I think my number two is Wolf of Wall Street, which is such, like, as we were talking about it, like, so opposite of this, where, like, if Once Upon a Time and this movie are softer, Wolf is like the polar opposite of that, where it's like as hard as you can get on film. I think that's my second favorite, and then I'd put this number three. I think this is just after one watch, I'm willing to stick my neck out on that one, and
All right.
definitely want to check it out again. Um, I want to leave us with conclusion. I want to talk about how you felt. I know you said you weren't ready to rank it, but I was listening to the Mark Maron interview. I think I mentioned this earlier, and Mark, as he's going through with Paul Thomas Anderson back in 2017, he just starts going, "Oh yeah, so what's this one about? What's that one about?" Like he just like starts asking that question. So at first, before we get into conclusion, I wanted to see really what do you think this is about? Like what did you leave thinking about if you had to answer?
I think it's about cycles. Like it's in the name, one battle after another.
Yeah.
It's each generation doing what they can to address the problems of their day. But I think at the same time, the the challenge never changes in some ways. It's like even if yes, they're different battles, it's the same war is maybe an argument that you could make about equality, about the trends of nations going into authoritarianism. So I thought it was about a lot of politics in general. I think it's also about like the privilege of just being someone that's like, oh, I just don't really know a lot about it. It's like, yeah, I mean, not to sound too like virtue signaling guy, but like I really do believe it's like if you don't have an opinion, like that is a sign of privilege because there's people that are impacted by a lot of these policies every single day. And it probably just signals, and I'm one of them, that you're so insulated from real world ramifications of bad policy and dangerous precedent that like you just don't have to think about it. And so in a lot of ways, it motivated me to become a little bit more educated on certain things that like I like to think I'm up to date with parts of the news. I try to read the New York Times or whatever, but there's just like honestly, I treat it so casual with my education on some of those pieces that I would like to be a bit more well read on it.
Yeah, fair. I'll give you mine, then I'll give you my case for the 5 star,
Yeah.
and you don't have to do the same if you tell me at the top you weren't comfortable doing it. So,
Yeah.
so I'll say I think what this one was about, and from listening to interviews with PTA, and like he's a really interesting guy. Like for anyone out there who wants to hear more about it, I think the Mark Maron one's a great one to start with. I think he likes to put a lot of his own personal thoughts and feelings into films. Not every director is like that, like some are purely executing a script. I think this is him reconciling with the world that his generation left behind. He's got daughters
Mm-hmm.
now. And I think it in the epilogue with Leo, trying to figure out how to take a selfie and turn the flash on. It's like kind of a acknowledgement that he's done all he can now. He can sit back and relax and stop stressing, and it's the next generation's battle to fight now. And Willa,
Mm-hmm.
she gets the call that there's a protest in Oakland, and she's off, and he can't be that helicopter parent, keeping her protected anymore. Um, I'll give you my case of the 5 star. I think for the entire length of this film, I felt like Paul Thomas Anderson was in complete control. He was just picking things up, slowing it down. You were you were feeling good. Oh, Alana's gonna escape. Well, I was feeling good that Alana was gonna escape because I actually like licorice pizza. And then she's shot in the head. You think Leo's gonna escape? He falls 40 feet from the top of the
Mm-hmm.
building. You think Benicio and Leo are having a nice drive, like having a nice chit chat dialogue. Oh, he takes a sip of his beer and there's a cop. It was just Paul Thomas Anderson in full control, like over and over and over. I think all the performances are perfect. I think the music, the sound, the cinematography is perfect. There's thrilling action, there's comedy, there's emotional drama that I was tearing up at. We talked about how it was relevant but not heavy-handed. I think
Mm-hmm.
the big question I asked myself is like, what more can I ask of a film from this decade? And that's why I want to go 5. I think the one thing I could go against it, there's a couple twists, like the one with the bounty hunter that didn't quite work for me, but they contributed to the plot, which is setting up a great escape and a great battle. And I think overall, like, I don't know how PTA picks the kind of movies he wants to do, but I think I want him to keep making movies because he's going to perfect it all. Like everything he
Mm-hmm.
tries, it seems like he finds the way. Like the deep personal character studies, the big epics, the small romantic dramas, book adaptations, and then something like this. I hope that this movie does well enough that he can keep making movies like this, and I can't wait to see what he does next.
I love it. I love it, Mr. Ebert. You've come back to life. No, I completely agree with everything you just said. I wish that we had a movie this good to talk about every week,
I
like a
know.
contemporary movie. But yeah, I think it is really exciting to get to see again, like the positive feedback it's already gotten. And I really do hope that it ends up being a financial success. I hope it ends up being a movie that can like create real movements and change in society. Whoever knows with those sorts of things, but I do think even if it isn't, I think this is the sort of movie that can absolutely inspire a next generation of filmmakers and of people that try to make change too, which I think is really exciting. But I think this was a good ep, John. I don't think I have too much else to talk about with this one for the time being, at least. Like we said, we're definitely going to
Yeah,
watch it again. But
I'll
I
just
was
be
really excited.
I'll be anxiously waiting to see your rating. I'll be refreshing Letterboxd until you can't just leave it blank forever. It's got to come in.
It'll come out at some point. Give me a couple weeks.
Okay, fair enough.
All right. Well, great episode, John. We'll be back. We do not know what our next movie is, but maybe Halloween, maybe a little ranking going on.
I already started the presentation, so we'll talk more about that.
I love it. Okay, sounds good. We'll talk soon.